1,139. That's how many fan games were released during the first year of Five Nights at Freddy's, and that number has grown tremendously. Back in 2014, one of the few things to come close to FNaF in popularity were creepypastas, so it was only natural for them to cross paths at some point. However, there was only a handful of fan games that I could find because most of them have been taken down over the years. The earliest one I could find was Creepypasta Castle, with it being released during October of 2014. There's actually a possibility that this was the first completed FNaF fan game, but as of right now, I am unsure. When it released, Creepypasta Castle was relatively unpopular, with there only being around 5 YouTube videos ever made on it. The game itself was a very basic mod to the first game where almost no mechanics were changed. The only thing it did was change all of the animatronics to be creepypasta characters, and they were literally just PNGs. The gameplay itself was pretty horrendous. There's almost no other information available on this game, as the only download to it was deleted 9 months ago. There is a sequel to this game, but it's just more of the same stuff. This one's actually less documented though, with there only being 2 videos on it. Unfortunately, that's all that Creepypasta Castle really has going for it, so I'm gonna talk about one of the coolest fan games that I've ever played. Oblitus Casa, specifically the Creepypasta Challenge Nights. There are 4 of these challenge nights, with them being based off of the most iconic creepypastas ever made. The 4 being Jeff the Killer, Eyeless Jack, Slenderman, and Smile Dog. These challenges are also really difficult, so shout out to hit YouTuber David Barrett for having a really well put together guide on them. The first challenge is Jeff the Killer's, and Jeff's you start in the afterlife, where you need to activate every camera. To do this, just sit on them for a little bit. However, while you do this, Jeff will try to attack you. He can appear on one of 2 entrances to your left or right, and you'll have to shine your flashlight on him to prevent him from entering the room. If you fail to catch him though, he'll enter your room. This isn't a big deal, as if you stand still, he will leave after a little bit, but if you do it too much, you will end up dying. Additionally, if you stand still for too long, you begin to fall asleep, and you will die if you end up falling asleep. Overall, this challenge is pretty alright. It's not my least favorite by any means, but it's not my favorite either. The second Creepypasta challenge is Slenderman's. In his challenge, you quite literally play Slenderman the 8 pages. You start in the tunnels, and Slenderman will begin to hunt you once you collect your first page. Slenderman's challenge is relatively simple. Just venture through the tunnels and try your best to avoid him as you collect his pages. When Slenderman is nearby, your screen will begin to shake and take on a slight monochromatic tone. Additionally, if you stare at Slenderman for too long, you will die. Slenderman will also chase you, and if he catches up, you will, again, die. This challenge can be kind of a pain due to RNG, but it is doable. The third challenge is Smile Dog. Smile Dog will manifest himself on a notepad that you have, and you need to erase him before you lose your sanity. Smile Dog will try to reform himself though, and when he starts doing this, find him on the cameras and shine your flashlight on him to make him go away. If you can't find Smile Dog on the cameras, then he's in the attic, where you will have to hold your lighter on him until he disappears. After this, you can begin to erase him again. Overall, Smile Dog definitely has my least favorite minigame. From my experience, it was incredibly tedious. I would get so close to finishing it just for him to start to reform in the attic. The only real advice I can give for this minigame is to be as fast as possible in almost everything you do. The final challenge is Eyeless Jack, which is my personal favorite creepypasta. In Eyeless Jack's challenge, you are once again in the tunnels, but instead of having a flashlight, you have a camera. Your main goal with this camera is to take 5 pictures of Eyeless Jack. He will be wandering around the tunnels, and you can track him from his footsteps. The volume of his footsteps actually change depending on how close he is to you. When his footsteps sound extremely loud, he is right in front of you. When Eyeless Jack is in front of you, take a picture of him so you don't run into him. If you take the picture from too far though, he will begin to chase you. Eyeless Jack chasing you is an instant death though, he is outrunnable. That will take a decent chunk out of your 9-minute time limit though. The only real piece of advice I can give you for Eyeless Jack's challenge is to use your ears. And that concludes the minigames. With that being said, I convinced my good buddy Pastra to go over the actual game, so they'll be doing that now. Right? You're doing that, right? Right?
Guess what, buddy? I'm talking about Treasure Island. There's nothing you can do to stop me. Watch me. Here we go. Here we go. If we're talking about FNaF fan games inspired by creepypastas, then no discussion is complete without Treasure Island. This game made the characters from the original Abandoned by Disney creepypasta just as, if not more iconic to the FNaF fan base than the original community they were made for. This game came out at the perfect time, when fan games were virtually non-existent and practically everyone was playing the original Five Nights at Freddy's to see what all the hype was about. It was very common back then for people to want to get more out of the content seen from that original game, and with no sequels out yet, as shocking as it is to imagine that, they would turn to this game to satiate that. Actually, looking at the game itself though, it is very clear this game is a product of its time and earned practically all of its initial popularity off the spectacle of being one of the first FNaF games, cause yeah, this game ain't great. It's a fine experience, it's got a cool aesthetic, the main mechanic of disabling cameras to get rid of threats is neat, but aside from that, this game is quite dated and becomes very boring to play once you realize what's going on. See, while the camera disabling mechanic is a cool idea that adds a level of resource management to the game, what with you only having a finite amount of cameras to turn off and it making characters harder to track, this is the only mechanic. Every single character in this game, aside from a mild detail about their behavior like Oswald being kinda hard to see or disembodied screaming in your face, is the exact same. They show up in your office, you disable a camera, they leave. Once you realize this, the game becomes absolutely brain dead. You sit there doing nothing, someone appears, you disable a camera, and you go back to doing nothing. That's the gameplay loop. Of course, later down the line, several remakes of Treasure Island would be made by other fan game devs, with my favorite FNaF fan game of all time, the 2020 remake by Radiant's team, completely fixing this formula by adding 2 new mechanics on top of the camera disabling. I feel like that just goes to show that the popularity of this game more so comes from the influence it's had on the FNaF fandom as opposed to the merits of the game itself. It isn't anything special in and of itself, but it showed people that FNaF fan games were something that could be made, and I feel like it in some way either directly or indirectly led to the creation of so many fantastic projects that would be made as a result. It may not be perfect, but I will forever respect the hell out of this game for that.
Overall, I am very surprised that there aren't more fan games about creepypastas. It really seems like they'd be a match made in heaven. Almost everything about them meshes perfectly with the Five Nights at Freddy's formula, and adding on to that, the first game's atmosphere even makes it feel like a creepypasta. Now, that's all I really have to say on this, so thank you for listening and have a great day.